listener-supported public broadcasting from the University of Central Florida. This program is brought to you in part by the Paul B. Hunter and Constance D. Hunter Charitable Foundation, Incorporated, a proud partner of WUCF-TV and the Central Florida community.
Welcome to this episode of Central Florida Road Trip. I'm Dr. Phil Hoffman. This time we're visiting Melbourne. Now, this Space Coast city is known for its concentration of defense and technology companies, which is quite a contrast from Melbourne's beginnings, which go all the way back to prehistoric times.
From the teeth, you can see this is a mastodon tooth and this is a mammoth tooth.
Bob Gross is a Melbourne resident and an amateur archaeologist. His large collection of fossils gathered from the Melbourne area tell of a time long ago when large mammals roamed the land.
We're on the campus of Florida Institute of Technology and their botanical gardens. It's a beautiful jungle garden that once was the home to mammoths, mastodons, and other Pleistocene fauna, and we think early man too. Back in 1923, a man by the name of Charles P. Singleton started an orange grove, and he had his workers come down into the jungle here to dig up muck to spread on his new orange grove. Well, as they were doing that, they found some bones. He was curious about these bones. In those days, some of these scientists from northern universities would come here on winter vacations, and they stopped and they looked at his bones and they got excited. And they started to dig here, and they found almost an entire mammoth.
The mammoth find put Melbourne on the map, but another discovery, along with it, stunned the archaeological world.
Crude spear point was found in close proximity to the rib cage, so they speculated that it had been killed by early man. And when they made the discovery here and found human bones subsequently on the Melbourne golf course, they thought at the time it was the earliest evidence of man in the New World. So it made national and international news. It was really an exciting find.
And whatever became of the mammoth skeleton that was found in Melbourne?
When the mammoth was discovered, it belonged to Mr. Singleton because it was his property. And he was going to give it to the city of Melbourne to be mounted in the old Melbourne Hotel for a tourist attraction. Well, they couldn't raise the money to restore it and put it together. So it ended up at Amherst College, along with the later mastodon. It was a true loss because so much has been found in Brevard County, but very little of it stays here.
I'm here at Overlook Park, which is thought to be close to the site of Peter Wright's original cabin, who along with two other freed slaves are credited with being the settlers that founded Melbourne.
The original settlers of Melbourne were three black men, Peter Wright, Wright brothers, and Balaam Allen.
We know that Peter Wright came here in 1867 and homesteaded property. However, he had his ambition to want to be a mailman, and what he did was he sold some of his property to a man named John Hector, who was the first postman of Melbourne, and John Hector took the money and gave him a cat sailboat.
Peter Wright carried the mail from Titusville to Fort Pierce. He brought it down in a sailboat. As he approached each community, he would blow his conch shell to let the residents know that he was coming into the town.
It was an arduous task, but he loved it, and he had a great relationship with the community by delivering the mail.
Peter Wright acquired land which is now downtown Melbourne.
He had this beautiful home, the first two-story home in Melbourne. It was right there on Front Street by Indian River, and on that property he had orange groves, pineapple groves, bananas. Eventually, over time, he started to sell off this property, and history has it recorded, it's oral history, but 1885 he moved to Rockledge, and eventually he ended up in Cocoa. 1925 is when he died, and he is buried today in the cemetery called Hilltop in Cocoa. Wright brothers also sailed to South Melbourne deeded property just like Peter Wright, and his son was the first black child to attend school in his Little Red Schoolhouse. Today, that Little Red Schoolhouse, it stands on FIT, Florida Institute of Technology property. The family had a lot of influence in this community. There's a Brothers Park that's named in recognition of Wright Brothers, a Brothers Avenue.
There's not much history recorded on Ballin Allen, but he did leave a legacy in Melbourne along with Wright Brothers.
They were in this very house that's behind me where they had a meeting one day and they sat down and they decided to go ahead and start their first church, the first black church in this community, which is named Greater Allen AME Church. I am telling you, and I believe this area right here is where Balaam Allen and Wright Brothers met with their other friends.
Greater Allen Chapel began a festival called the annual Crane Creek Founders Heritage Festival. And it is that festival that we're commemorating the history of the founding of Melbourne, Florida, to slavery. When one had been in captivity for many years and they find themselves in a place that's unknown to even themselves, and they became very productive with what they had. They built families, they built homes, they built businesses, they built a community that became a thriving community, and most of all, they built the first house of prayer in the city of Melbourne, Florida. And that is to me, a profound reason to celebrate the significance of this great home and this community as well.
Melbourne's history is actually the story of two cities, O'Galley and Melbourne, which merged in 1969. But we begin with the story of O'Galley and the settler for which this area is named.
One of the first settlers to come to what is now O'Galley was a gentleman named John Carroll Houston. And now he was actually a native Floridian, so he was born in northeast Florida, present-day Nassau County. He worked as a steamboat captain on the St. Johns River, moved down to Enterprise, Florida, present-day Volusia County.
John Houston was in the Army at Enterprise, and the Army sent him over here as a scout to find out how many Indians were still here on the East Coast. He fell in love with the area. He thought it was beautiful over here.
He'd received land grants for his service in the Seminole Wars, and he used those grants to settle what is now O'Galley in southern Brevard County. We know that he moved down here in 1859 and began constructing a log cabin right on the Indian River near present-day downtown O'Galley.
The Houstons named what we call O'Galley today, they named it Arlington because they had lived in Arlington, Florida, which is close to Jacksonville.
Soon after Houston moved his family to Arlington, the Civil War broke out, and Florida joined the fight. John's son, John IV, did not join the Army like he and his father had done during the Indian Wars, but instead used the frontier settlement's connection with the ocean to help wage the war.
He was a blockade runner. His area that he worked in was from Jupiter to Nassau. The Union forces eventually caught him.
John Houston III died in 1885. His son John served as O'Galley's mayor for 3 different terms. And the family's private cemetery lies on Highland Avenue in Old O'Galley. But how did Arlington become O'Galley? Well, that story begins with William Gleason's arrival here in the 1870s.
Gleason was not originally from Florida. He was from New York, but served in the state government as lieutenant governor after the Civil War. After resigning his post, he received a land grant, so he came down to this part of Florida and began platting out a town.
They came from Eau Claire, Wisconsin. They didn't like the name Arlington.
The Gleasons renamed the town after its distinct Rocky River shoreline.
O'Galley, both words are French. The galley part comes from the French word gallet, which means rocky. So it was rocky water.
William Gleason's home, built in 1884, still stands majestically on Pineapple Avenue as an outstanding example of Queen Anne-style architecture. O'Galley remained a small coastal town for many years until the space program brought tremendous growth to the area in the early 1960s. O'Galley and Melbourne agreed to merge in 1969 and by a vote decided to drop the name O'Galley and unify under the name Melbourne. Many residents to this day still don't like the change.
But I still call this O'Galley. This is still my home, always has been and always will be.
50 years later, I still call it O'Galley. People from Melbourne don't like it when they hear me say that, but I still call it O'Galley. I still do a return address of O'Galley, and it will always be O'Galley to me.
Behind me is the Rossiter House, home to an early O'Galley family that was very important to the town's history, including their daughter, who became a pioneer businesswoman and a community philanthropist.
James Rossiter comes to O'Galley in 1902, and at that time he was part owner in a commercial fishing operation.
The fishermen would bring their catch, and he was sort of an agent for the fishermen.
They would barrel that fish and ship the fish up north on the newly created Florida East Coast Railroad. So it was a perfect business opportunity.
This was not the only venture Mr. Rossiter was known for. James was the distributor for Standard Oil, and the Rossiters became well established within O'Galley. Their legacy in the old town is remembered, and their home today is a museum, preserved by the Florida Historical Society and the Rossiter House Foundation. The homestead is a time capsule of the life lived by the Rossiters, and particularly John's oldest daughter, named Caroline.
Mr. Rossiter died when he was 58 years old.
His oldest child was his daughter, Caroline Postel Rossiter, affectionately called Carrie.
She took over the dealership of the Standard Oil. At that time, not many women took on such jobs.
She was the first, and for a very long time, the only Standard Oil distributor in the country, and she was operating in O'Galley.
This is Carrie's bedroom, which she took over in later years.
Carrie's room gives you insight into the kind of eclectic and colorful woman she was.
She also set an example, you might say, for being a woman, and heading into Depression years and running that distributorship for 62 years.
She really grew that business into one of the largest in the state and amassed quite a fortune.
She loved O'Galley and gave back in myriad ways.
She donated a lot of her time and her money towards various community efforts.
Carrie formed the Rossiter House Foundation in the 1990s to preserve her family's history before passing in 1999. Tours are offered at the home located on Highland Avenue, and the house stands today as a reminder of O'Galley's roots and the pioneer woman who paved her own way and made her mark on the small town.
This beautiful old house behind me is in danger of being lost forever. Known as Green Gables, this was once the home to one of the prominent early families of Melbourne. Now, a group of citizens have banded together to try to save the historic structure, but time is running out.
We're at Green Gables, the family home of William T. and Nora Wells, built in 1896. They came down here from New York, looking for a healthy place for his wife to live. Here we are in the reception room of the house. This is where visitors would first arrive. They would see, first off, the staircase. They would see the fretwork, which, according to oral history, the family gathered when they were traveling in India. And they brought it back here for use in their house, what they were going to build in Melbourne. The house was originally built as an American four-square, just basically a two-story box. Did not have the fancy tower or the octagon on the porch. As the next few years went by, between 1896 and about 1910, Wells, year by year, added improvements to the house. This would have been the primary bedroom. In the day, they would not have talked about it as being a master bedroom, but it was the primary bedroom. Depending on what you can see, this is the room that's inside the tower. This is one of the last houses associated with an early leader in Melbourne. Wells came down here with a vision. He loved Melbourne. and he began working to improve it. Over the years, he published a local newspaper. He and his wife put together the first library. He built the high school.
The Wells family also donated the land for a park, which today in Melbourne is known as Wells Park.
This is the kitchen. The family would have prepared their meals here. You go into most houses today and they're very bland. This house has personality. You walk through it and you feel the personality.
This piece of Melbourne history is in need of restoration and may be facing a wrecking ball.
Let's call this meeting to order. So the first item...
A group of dedicated volunteers led by Daly are working together to raise public awareness and funds to save Green Gables.
We currently have an opportunity to acquire this beautiful property on the river, on US 1, for roughly a quarter of its appraised value.
Getting people to experience the home is one way they hope people will care enough to donate and help save the historic home and property.
Today is Info Day. It's a day when we wanted to tell people not just about the history of the house, which we've been doing for years now, but also to give them an idea of how the project itself was going.
I agree with you. I think it's a great cause.
I just think it's so interesting. I love the history. I think when I see it, I'm a writer, so I see the story, and so when a house is being refurbished like that, I just feel like it's kind of a part of history being brought back to life.
We're having a great turnout today. I'm really pleased at the number of people who have turned out to show an interest, again, not just in the history of the house, but also in the project and how we're doing things. We've had, gosh, almost a record number of people coming through today, in fact.
Too many people in this day and age are too willing just to get rid of the old and build new on it. You know, why not save a huge part of history? And this house is a huge part of history.
It's such a thrill to show people this house, to show people that there really is still a connection to our heritage and to our past.
The house needs to be saved because it's a part of the history of Melbourne. The people who lived in it were so massively impactful to what ended up becoming Melbourne, and to forget that, you're forgetting how things came to be.
It's an important opportunity that we will be very regretful of if we don't succeed in doing.
Melbourne's original downtown was here on Front Street, right on the shore of the Indian River. But a disastrous event in 1919 changed the young town forever.
It was called the Great Fire of Melbourne.
The fire started in the northernmost building on Front Street. It was a business, but it was also an apartment. Upstairs, there was a stove in the upstairs apartment. It caught fire, and the tenant threw it out of the apartment right onto the sidewalk. And so within seconds, the fire began to spread southward down Front Street.
It lit up all of the riverside buildings.
These buildings and the sidewalk, of course, were all made of wood. So naturally, they would burn quickly.
At one point, they were worried the fire might spread west, but the wind changed and it didn't.
The entire downtown was decimated.
The 1919 fire destroyed a lot of the original wood frame structures. So everything that exists today was built in the 1920s and later.
Although they did rebuild some along the river, Melbourne began building toward the west. That's when the downtown area started getting built up.
Today there's a park and just a few buildings on Front Street. Nothing to remind you of its former glory. But during some utility work a few years ago, some artifacts from the fire resurfaced.
In 2013, when the city came to put in new pipes, we did an amateur dig, and these are some of the treasures we found from the fire in 1919. If you bring this piece close and smell, that's a fire smell, still in that wood after 99 years. This fire was so intense, you can see that this glass is totally melted or molten.
The 1919 fire did not destroy one very popular downtown attraction.
Behind me, you see this bluff, this hill. On that hill were built the Tristine Steps. They were attached to the bluff, And once you got to the top of those steps, you took the bluff walk or the bluff path, which was considered a road in its day. The fronts of the homes faced the river. The bluff went 5 blocks to the beautiful home, Green Gables.
From the top of the trysting steps, you could look out over the Indian River.
And it was very famous. It was a popular place for lovers and tourists. It was about 12 feet wide, and you didn't want to get too close to the water. It was a 25-foot drop there.
In early 2000, the trysting steps were destroyed for planned development that never materialized. The steps are now just a memory, noted on a historical marker near Front Street.
Many older Florida cities struggle a little bit with embracing the new while maintaining the old, especially in their historic downtown. Melbourne, and I'm here in Old O'Galley, has found a way to be old and hip all at the same time.
Downtown Melbourne is home to 20-plus restaurants and 40-plus retail stores. We have a lot of art galleries. We have 2 theaters, a brewery. You will not find any chains in downtown Melbourne. Everything here is indigenous to the area. The Melbourne Mural Project started about 3 years ago, and really it was just an effort to bring a revitalization tool into downtown Melbourne. Murals provide psychological boosts, they add an exciting element, and they're tradition makers. We're looking through probably over 75 different mural designs that we received when we did our original call to artists when we announced the Melbourne Mural Project. So we got entries from local artists that have lived here their whole lives to really artists all over the country. This is one of my favorite murals that we completed downtown. It's the Florida Institute of Technology mural, and it really symbolizes the Space Coast with its focus on aerospace technology and marine science and really everything that we are known for in this area.
The O'Galley Arts District saw murals as a way to revitalize the old O'Galley downtown.
The concentration of murals really creates a destination. People will come down and shop, eat, hang out, but also tour all the murals that are down here. And while they're here, they discover there's a lot more down here.
My job was to come up with a collaborative, interactive mural that the whole community could participate in.
It's an octopus. I wanted to do something that was dramatic, but not threatening. Kind of chaotic in a way, but soft also and serene.
We went in a slump, we're now on the way out, and murals are the wind beneath our wings.
In 1994, Melbourne became home to the Brevard Zoo, said to be the largest community-built zoo in the entire country. Over 16,000 community members came together here to make this place happen. Now, you may also not know that this is home to the Sea Turtle Healing Center, where injured sea turtles are cared for and then returned to their home in the ocean.
The eastern coast of Florida is actually the #1 loggerhead nesting spot in the entire world. The Zoo and Sea Turtle Preservation Society came together and decided to build a facility here in Brevard County so that our turtles could get better care and quicker, more immediate care.
Many turtles treated at the Brevard Zoo Animal Care Center are in because of various infections or boat strikes.
We're treating her for a little bit of a bone infection, so she's getting better. She's showing a lot of progress. She'll be with us just a little bit longer.
Fibropapillomatosis, or FP, causes the turtles to develop tumors across their skin and is the most common disease treated at the Animal Care Center.
Thankfully, a lot of them we can do surgery on, and we can release those turtles once they've gone through surgery. They can be released. So that's a promising aspect, but we still don't understand all of the facets of that disease and how to make it stop.
This is Chunky Monkey.
Boat strikes also regularly affect sea turtles, and the Animal Care Center can provide surgery, like what was done for this guy named Chunky Monkey.
This area right here is where Chunky got hit by a boat. So we are going to attempt to reset that bone and kind of try to push it back into place.
The turtles are often given treatment to ensure hydration.
The fluids that we give are essentially like a turtle Gatorade.
To maintain health and proper weight of the turtles, the zoo uses a strict diet.
There's a mix of red and green algae, as well as fish and squid.
Although medical treatment is done by the professional staff, the turtles are also taken care of by community volunteers.
We have an amazing group of volunteers. There's generally 3 in the morning and 3 in the afternoon, and they will do most of the husbandry. So they're cleaning tanks, they're measuring our water salinity and our pH balance and all that stuff that we need to do for water chemistry, and they're feeding our turtles.
The Animal Care Center is closed to the public, but that doesn't stop the Melbourne community from gathering on the beach to watch the sea turtles be released after treatment.
People in Florida love their turtles, and so as a community, when we have a release, that's our chance to make people aware of the turtles that we have. And it's a very exciting time for us to get to watch that turtle go home, but then also to get to talk to everybody and tell everybody about what that turtle's story is. If we can get the community to feel that connection with the turtles, you'll start to see change.
Well, we hope you've enjoyed this edition of Central Florida Road Trip and our visit to Melbourne. We'll see you next time on the road in Central Florida.